Hello, everyone. Welcome to IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Joel Ward, and with me is Ryan Smetzer. Ryan, how are you doing?
Great, man. It's great to finally be able to do this and great to be on.
Yes. I am so glad we finally got to do this. I know we've been bouncing schedules around. It's just been so hard, with you've got your personalities and stuff you got to handle, and I've got my stuff. And so it's like finally we got to join and get the show going. So
Yeah.
Ryan, I know you personally. I know you through church. I know you through just your radio personas that you have. I've seen I follow you on all socials, just seeing what you're doing. But for those who don't know, Ryan is a radio host and he has a lot of different things he does. So I'm going to let Ryan take it from here and introduce himself a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, I do full-time radio during the week, where I am live on two stations. I have a top 40 station in Hagerstown, live 96.7, and then in the evenings I'm on the air on Mix 95.1 out of Chambersburg. The beauty of it too is because of things that shifted because of the pandemic, it's all done from home. So this is my remote studio inside of my house, which was like an old walk-in closet that I had used for like DJ equipment storage, and it's now a studio space, and it's kind of growing more and more and evolving as the months go on and as the the last year and a half has gone on. And so that's what I do during the week. A lot of radio content, video content for our radio brands, and then obviously there during the weekends, I operate a DJing business called Ryan Smetzer Entertainment, which I do a whole slew of weddings all around the area, basically up and down I-81. Like I do a ton of weddings up in like the Frederick and Hagerstown area, and then I go up to York, Harrisburg, Lancaster, and that neck of the woods. So all the way up and down PA, Maryland, West Virginia, and yeah. So it's a blast. I tell people all the time that all the way during the week and during the weekends, it feels like I'm just throwing a party with a bunch of people. Now, so a little bit more remotely during the week, but on the weekends, I get to get out and do all the weddings and throw some cool parties and have some fun.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but actually Emily went on my show not that long ago. The
Oh,
mayor of
nice.
Hagerstown went on my show. And I got to talk to her. That was really awesome. It was actually right when she became mayor. I actually reached out to her and wanted her to go on my show because she was the first
Sweet.
female mayor in Hagerstown. I thought that was really cool.
Mhm.
So Ryan, what made you get into all this? I don't know you. I know you personally, but I don't know you like your background story. What made you get into DJing and radio? Like, what made you want to do that?
Yeah, so a lot of people have that like what I want to be when I grow up kind of story of like, okay, well, when they were like 6 years old, 7 years old, or whatever, they want to be an astronaut or a football player or that kind of thing. And when I was like 9 or 10 years old, I was watching TV a ton growing up, and when I would get up and get ready to get on the bus, I'd watch the Today Show. Before I'd go to bed, I'd always watch American Idol and like those kinds of shows. I was like, this is super cool. I'd love to do this one day. So at 9 or 10 years old, my whole childhood, what I want to be when I grow up thing was on, I want to be on TV or I want to be on radio. And so like I would do stuff like take my mom's old tape recorder from like the 1990s and basically like record like either Hot 99.5 or, one of Ryan Seacrest's like American Top 40 shows and record my voice over his introducing the songs and stuff. And so I got into it so young of just being like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Middle school, I did morning announcements crew. So I was, the dorky kid that would jump up to the podium and tell my classmates what the school lunches were, and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously that ended up evolving into me doing theater for a little while in high school. Went to Barbara Ingram for musical theater for those 4 years, and then kept that dream alive of wanting to do broadcast. Went to HCC, got my gen eds, and then went to Shippensburg and got my degree in electronic media. And around the same time that I transferred to Shippensburg, I had taken a part-time position at the company that I work for now and did Saturday mornings for Mix 95.1, and did that for a little while. My senior year of college got shifted over to doing evenings on that station, and it's just kind of grown, more and more each year. There's something else that kind of gets tacked on, and it's a fun ride, man. And it's one of those things that like the ability for me to be able to start a career in what I dreamed of doing as a kid and be able to start it in my hometown is even cooler. Like that's a pinch me moment of like, at some point down the road, my hopeful that, my career will evolve to where I'm, in a larger market or things like that. But the ability for me to be able to kind of get that good kickstart of my career and build a repertoire, build a portfolio, build on all of those things here in this area, where I've grown up in, and be able to kind of serve this community as the first community to get to serve in my career. It's a huge blessing to be able to have that opportunity. So, but that's kind of how it started. I wanted to do it since I was a kid. I was, wanted to be a firefighter or an astronaut when I was a toddler, obviously, because you get those toys and you're like, man, I want to be in a spaceship. And then finally, as I became more in tune with like, the reality of things, I was like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I want to be in broadcast, and I've kept that since I was 9 or 10 years old, and I plan on holding on to that for until I don't. So yeah.
No, and it's funny, and I talk about this with a couple guests because we talk about podcasting and stuff. And back when we were, I mean, I don't know how old you are. I mean, I'm assuming you're like close to
26,
my.
yeah.
Okay, so you're younger than me actually. I'm 31, but it's still the same era. Back when we were growing up, everybody wanted to have their face somewhere, and
Yeah.
now in 2022. It is so simple to
Mhm.
just start a podcast, a YouTube
Yeah.
channel. But back when we were kids, I remember when YouTube first came out and it was like everybody was trying to be famous on YouTube, and some of them made it, some of them didn't. But it was
Right.
so hard for those who were like, just like they didn't know the technical side of things. And now everybody, I mean, look, I've got like equipment to like go and do stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so simple. You have a computer, you have a mic, you have headphones, you have a webcam,
And you
boom.
got this, like,
Yeah,
this is
you can
so easy.
record on your phone. I know it's so simple.
Yeah.
You can record podcasts from your phone and then upload them, and everybody can
Mhm.
hear them with
Right.
Anchor, with everything. It's so simple. And what people
Exactly.
don't understand is like dreams are more achievable. I feel like now that we're
Mhm.
older, and I have this podcast, and I've been doing this for almost 2 years now.
Mhm.
I started it during the pandemic. And one of the things I realized is like I wanted like you, I wanted to be my voice. I was like, I hate my voice, but I wanna have a show. Like I wanted to have
Mhm.
a show.
Yeah.
And as soon as I was able to get that podcast up and running, and I had like 20 listeners in the beginning, and now I have like 4,000 listeners.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that's like, what? Like I didn't think I could do it. And it's one of the things you realize is like I'm sure you did, is like when you found out your dream was achievable and you start getting the steps and getting towards it, like that's awesome. And I think what
Mhm.
I really want to go at with this is, your dream was achievable, having a podcast is achievable, doing
Mhm.
something in the content creation world is achievable for anyone. And I know you,
Right.
you can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah,
So
it's and anybody can really have a platform, and it's all about that consistency because again, like we've all got this, we've all have, cameras, we all have the ability to create that content. The resources are easy to attain. It's more so of that, consistency of like, hey, let's create something every day, every week, whatever that pattern might be. And that's where you see those individuals that, are the top dogs on TikTok, that are the, top people on YouTube that are, finding ways to even monetize on this kind of stuff. They're the ones that, they're putting in that work every single day to create content that they know is going to, appear on somebody's For You page, or, build the listenership on podcasting and stuff like that. Like you said, everyone has the opportunity now with a phone and an app and an internet connection to create a podcast or create, some video content. It's all about like, then, okay, what's your target market? What's your brand going to be like? What are you going to create content for? And how are you going to grow that? I think that's what's been huge, not only for me with the radio station, but even with the DJing business. Like it's that consistency of getting content out there so that people see like, okay, this is Ryan, this is what he does, and this is who he is. So like, a lot of times, especially with DJing businesses, you can easily just say, hey, I'm a wedding DJ, do a bunch of weddings, carry that like word of mouth marketing where everybody's like, oh yeah, I had Ryan do my wedding. He was great, did a great job. You should book him. But what I, have always done in the last several years of doing weddings and DJing and having that business is posting like Instagram stories when I'm at the weddings, where I'm jumping around, having a good time, singing along to the songs, talking to the, to the couples, like all that kind of stuff, because that's the stuff that then, if people are on my Instagram and they pull that stuff up, they're like, yeah, that's so much fun. Like, and that's where those connections come into play, because again, it's that consistent content. It's growing your reach, and you have like so many opportunities to do so. It's just one of those things where it's like, how are you going to leverage that resource that you're given?
Yeah, and I like that, because content creation is key. And you made that point, is that if you're not creating content daily or weekly or
Mm-hmm.
monthly,
Yeah.
you are not going to get those views. Like I seen these things like, oh, start a YouTube channel, it's super easy. No, it's not. Like I have a YouTube channel with 320 subscribers for the show, but it still could get better. I
Yeah.
have more listeners on the podcast itself, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts. I have more listeners on there than I do on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Why? It's because not everybody wants to watch the show; they want to listen to it. So
Yep.
I'm trying to market the show on YouTube, but
Mm-hmm.
it's people would rather listen to it. And yes, I do post videos every once in a while, but it's not like it's a thing where I'm like, hey, I'm going to share the video,
Yeah.
but people watch it and then they're like, and I get emails on certain people who I've on the show, and they'll email me or they'll reach out to me on Facebook, because I make myself public on everything.
Yeah.
And they'll say, hey, I took something for example, recently I had a show with this guy talking about, it was Ari. Can't pronounce his last name, but he was on the show. He was talking about selling yourself and selling, how you should sell the product you're working with, or the thing you're doing, and or yourself. And I had someone reach out to me and say, I was really touched by your episode, and I was able to use that in a current meeting that landed me a client. And it's
Yeah.
like one of those things, like you hear positive feedback, you hear that stuff, and you're
Right.
like, hold up, I'm making an impact with my content. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
about me making content, it's about me making an impact. And one of the things I want to touch on real quick is, a lot of you and me, we make content for people to hear and people to get some information and feel good about themselves. Whereas like some people just create content just to make it so they can become famous.
Mm-hmm.
And my point to people is, if you're making content, make it for someone to get information, make it for someone to learn something new. My point
Mm-hmm.
about this show is for having guests on like you and Benjamin Mawson or Tiffany Hanner or Charlene Rachel, something where information can be shared so people can get something out of the show. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just for me to get views. It's not just for me to get, monetization, because I do.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's not about the money. And that's not why I wrote the 2 books. I wrote, for
Right.
people who don't know, I wrote 2 books, and
Yeah.
I didn't write the books to get the money. I wrote the books for information, to share
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts and concerns and things about my life with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah, because
And so
these aren't always like platforms that are financially fruitful.
exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's what people assume, like especially like even in mine in my career field, like they're like, oh, you're in radio, like man, you must be like raking in the dough, and I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. Let's have a conversation. Like I'll be like, let me tell you how that works, because like the same thing too, like you said with like it's not about the monetization. No, not at all, because at the end of the day, like YouTube monetization, podcast monetization, like unless you're Joe Rogan, like most of the time you're not like, yeah, you're getting monetized, but it's not like you're raking in like hundreds of dollars every week or something on a podcast. Like, yeah, you're getting money, but it's it's not a massive thing. And same thing even I imagine with like with book sales and stuff. So it gives you even more of that inspiration to embrace the why of why you're doing it, because it's not like at the end of the day, it's not for the money at all. Like it's for the why. Like, okay, who am I talking to? That kind of thing.
Exactly. I'd like to go into a little personal thing for you. You actually do some stuff for the church as well,
Mhm.
don't you?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so you kind of like introduce the service. You get in the front of the camera, and you, in your personality and everything, and you're like, hey, welcome to Crossroads, that, this and third. And I love the energy you bring to the camera. It's not that I don't say everybody else doesn't bring the energy, but you kind of, the energy, and I've told people this about you. I said the energy Ryan brings to the radio, to his DJing, to anything he's doing is just passion. It's pure passion. And at the church, I can definitely tell when we have interactions at church or in public, you have that energy and passion with you 24/7. And maybe you at the end of the day, you're like, oh, thank God it's over. But like when you're out in public, I see that passion, I see that energy. I love that you keep that going every day.
Mhm. Yeah, that's honestly like, what I always kind of embrace and what I've always tried to embrace, even whenever I started, getting into radio, which eventually then transitioned to opportunities like being able to do like online hosting at Crossroads and all of those different things, is, I always went in with, like I mentioned earlier, with the why. Like, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because, yes, obviously as a kid, I wanted to be the next Ryan Seacrest and all that kind of stuff. And that's a career goal. That's like hey, that's where I would like to be as far as like, a platform, but that kind of thing. But, I'm not trying to achieve the platform for the sake of the followers or for the sake of the like, yeah, okay, I've got all these people that I can talk to, or I've all these like endorsement opportunities or different things like that. Like it's, the reason why is so that I can spread positivity. That was the very like vague, simple thing that I had decided to do from the very beginning, was saying like, hey, I want to spread positivity in what I do, whether it is through DJing weddings, through live streaming, or doing all of my radio content. A lot of my content whenever I'm on the air is mostly positive. Like and even in a time where there's a lot of negativity, 2020 was a challenge for that, but there was always something good going on, and so embracing that positivity so that if somebody's driving around and they just had the worst possible day at work, or maybe they deal with or suffer from anxiety or depression, maybe that's their battle that they're going through that day, that they are able to at least receive some sort of smile or some sort of laugh, whenever they are driving home from work, if they're in their house listening in their living rooms or whatever it might be. And that's why, like, a lot of the content that I do for the radio station outside of just talking on the actual terrestrial radio is a lot of silly stuff that it's like, hey, like if somebody can get a laugh out of this, even if it's a laugh at my own expense, like, not self-deprecated humor, but something funny that I did or said or whatever, then it's like, getting that positivity out there. And then the beauty of connecting that to doing that in ministry was, oh, this is awesome. I have this opportunity to do exactly what I'm doing in the secular world in, top 40 radio and, on mix, and then with, weddings and all that stuff. And being able to use it as like a kingdom expansion kind of concept, taking that same energy, that same, passion for positivity that I have on the mic on air, and then taking all of that and using it in a ministry type of way. And honestly, the two intersect so well with each other. Like that's the one question I get a lot with the ministry side of things is, how hard is it to go from, talking up, Cardi B and, Chris Brown and, all these artists and doing stuff in top 40, which is, totally different than obviously like, elevation worship or anything like that. And then shifting gears and on Sunday morning coming in and introducing a service. And I'm like, honestly, it's not like it helped me find a balance to where I'm more conversational whenever I'm talking on the radio, and you're not having the whole like, hey, this is Live 96.7. How's everybody doing today? Like where it's just that like old 90s, kind of corny sounding radio personality vibes. It's more conversational because if you're like that of the, corny radio DJ type of vibes and you're introing a service, it's going to intimidate somebody. It's going to make a person be like, ooh, I don't know about this. I'm going to go ahead and, log out or exit out of the video. If they're welcomed, if they're, feeling that conversational energy and they feel like comfortable, not only are they going to watch the experience, but there's that possibility and that high chance that they're going to feel even more comfortable to show up in person and come into the church building as well. And that's what, it's a pinch me moment every single weekend that I have that opportunity, because again, it's using what I do in my secular job and bringing it into spiritual, because at the end of the day, that whole I want to spread positivity things is like I want to shine the light of Jesus to the to the people that I'm able to communicate with. And that platform that I have is through social media, through my radio station, through all that kind of stuff. Obviously, because just the job itself, like I can't go on the air and tap the microphone, hit record, and just spread the gospel every afternoon on 96.7. People will be like, what are you talking? I thought we were doing the weather, that kind of thing. But, that's where the whole, I want to spread positivity and everything. And then that just, it translates so heavily into the ministry side of things. And it's not like a best of both worlds thing where it's like, oh, you have two different, personalities. No, it like, it very much bridges that gap between secular and spiritual, being able to do communication in radio in a secular landscape and communication in a spiritual landscape.
Yeah, I like that. And honestly, when I see you on a Sunday, whether I'm watching online or just in person, because I'll be in the lobby and you'll be doing this the bit your bit like in the mornings, and I'll be
Yeah.
standing there waiting on my friends to get there so I can sit with them, and I'll be listening to you talk, and it's one of those things. It's like I don't see like I don't see a transition like you said, like the radio DJ voice, like
Yeah.
hey guys, I don't see that. I see that like the
Right.
positivity like you're talking about coming out of you. And when I watch you online, and it's just specifically online, it's on my TV, and I see you having that conversation with whoever you're in the video with, and it's
Yeah.
like you are sharing the gospel through your positivity on a Sunday morning to get someone to come to church and to show
Mhm.
up. And I do not let me see this. I do not see it in your personal on the radio persona on the radio. I see it as your love for God and love for others shows up on the radio because you want to bring, like you said, that positivity to the show. You don't want to just make people feel like they're on some
Yeah.
basic radio. You want to bring some good to the show. And
Yeah.
and it does. And I get those people who are like, oh, it's a secular show. Why is he doing that and going to church? Yeah, but you know what? We need to be the love of Christ no matter
Mhm.
where we are. And so I think what you're doing in radio and what you're doing in the church is phenomenal. Like you're
Mhm.
able to keep that balance, but you're also able to keep that same positive vibes across the board.
Yeah, because it's like, especially whenever it comes to the ministry side of things, whenever we're doing a pre-show, our main intention and goal with doing the pre-show is to get people energized, comfortable, and prepared for what's to come in the worship experience. And that's the one thing that I know that, like, from experience, whenever I kind of got back into my reconnecting with my faith years ago, walking into a church building, it's an intimidating thing. And so the beauty of having an online ministry at the same time is so great nowadays, because you watch it and you're like, oh, this is great. Or like, these two or three people at the table, like, they seem like a lot of fun. If this is the kind of people that are here in the building, I want to go check this out. And the comment that we get so many times whenever people do come after they've been watching for a while is, it's almost like I've been here for a year. Whenever people started to come back or started to attend in person, whenever COVID restrictions were being lifted and people were starting to come in more so in person, those people that were watching online for a whole year, they came in and their first reaction was, wow, it's like I've been in the building this whole time, which is the complete opposite of what, I and a lot of people that I've spoken to before that have come into a church for the very first time. They walk in and they're like, I don't know about this. Like, I'm not really sure. There's that kind of like, hesitancy, nervousness, and all of that. When people watch online, they're prepared, they're ready, and they're energized. And I'm in that spot, same with the radio, where it's like, okay, how can I make these people prepared, energized, and hyped up for their day, or hyped up for the rest of their evening, or whatever it might be? Because again, like, they might have something going on that they need that breath of fresh air, that brightening of their day, that moment so that they can smile or laugh or that kind of thing. Because the negative content, they can get that from any other social media or news or any outlet that they can get that info from. My intention is to have good music and then come on and talk about some fun stuff that people can either laugh or smile about, and be like, what, I'm going to turn on 96.7 or I'm going to turn on 95.1 because I know that Ryan's on and it can give me that little jolt of positivity in some way, shape, or form.
So we're about to end the show here. We're getting on our time. I want to ask you a real quick question,
Mhm.
and it's I don't know if you can take it as a loaded question, but can you give the listeners like just a quick thing about what they should do to get into what you're doing, like content creation? Like I have a lot of people come on and we talk about content creation on the show.
Yeah.
What is something advice, basically advice? What is some
Mhm.
advice you could give someone who's like, I really want to start a podcast. I really want to get on radio. I really want to be in my local church production or something. They want to
Mhm.
do Broadway or productions. What is something that
Yeah.
you could, as a young
Mhm.
Ryan growing up, what was the advice you could give now that you would help
Yeah.
someone get into that role?
Yeah, I mean, my first thing would be, what I kind of mentioned early on is, like, if this is in your hands already, use it to create content. I think so many people get into that spot where they feel like they have to have, a DSLR camera or a really nice microphone or all of these different kind of, products to be able to create good content. When at the end of the day, some of the greatest TikTokers of this time right now are ones that they were shooting stuff on this, and they still are. Like, some people do shoot on their DSLRs and it looks really cool and awesome, the content's great, but a lot of times it's that stuff that's right there on the phone. And like we had mentioned before with podcasting, like this can be, a podcasting, source. This can, you can do interviews with people on this thing. All of those different, aspects. Something that I've, dove into a little bit more so often, not myself personally on my own channel, but on other channels through interviews and stuff, is Twitch. The beauty of the fact that, like, you can broadcast live on a lot of things now, and interact with people that are already your friends if it's on Facebook Live or Instagram Live. Or the beauty of Twitch is, like, you're sitting there playing a game, or you're doing a morning show or a talk show with, like, friends of yours. It's going to grow over time because it's that organic base of people, same as TikTok, where people just will cling to it over time. So, this is such an awesome time to get into content creation, to get into any kind of media. And the same thing goes, with the ministry side of things. A majority of of churches, all around the country have shifted to where, online at one point was their only option during the pandemic. And a majority of those same ministries and churches have, kept their online ministry. Yes, the intention has shifted a little bit because it's not a situation of like, here is this source because you are, stuck at home or that kind of thing. But, now it is a little bit of that and a little bit of, preparing people. It's that, like, digital billboard almost, in a way of, like, people are seeing it, they're getting that experience, they're getting the, okay, this is what I can experience if I walk in those doors, and then they walk in the doors. Those opportunities, if you're already, plugged into your local church, those opportunities to be able to kind of, grow and evolve into doing communication is great. And I think especially if there's a conversative, personality, or, that kind of thing that you already have, like, more power to you. But I would say too, just overall, as far as content creation, like, any of the stuff you already have, use it and start to create content. And it's more so it's that consistency and that work. I had to teach myself that a lot, where I was like, all right, I need to have this camera, I got to have this lens, I got to have this and this. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, I don't need to have all of that. I can take all of the stuff that I have right now, put it all together, and strategize ways that I can use it, and keep really working at it consistently day in and day out, until there is a point where it's, monetizable, or you reach a point where you're like, all right, you know what, I'm going to get some of that nice fancy stuff that, that I was looking at, or I'm going to, upgrade the space around me, or that kind of stuff. But, at the end of the day, a lot of take a lot of the bigger podcasters of this time, they started with just one or two podcasts, or one or two microphones and a nice camera or their phone at a table. And it's grown into, monstrosities where they have full out studios and all that kind of stuff. So, I would say just start small. If you only have a minimal amount of stuff, start with that, and grow from there. And use your inspiration and resources here and here, so that then eventually this can grow into, actual material resources over time.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And honestly, to all those listening, Ryan didn't start out like, like he's saying, he didn't start out like I didn't start out. Like, I started out using my phone, like we were just talking about. I used my phone when I started, and it sounded horrible, but it was a show. And
Yeah.
people, and now it's refined. I have I'm gonna lift it up, but it's on the
There
video.
you
But I
go.
have a mic that has a filter, a pop filter, and I have a nice, really 4K webcam, and it's like, or 2K. I don't even know. It was a really nice one of those, like, webcams. And
Yeah. It's not
I'm still have,
pixelated.
yeah. And I have a DSLR, but do I use it
Yeah.
for doing the podcast? No, I do it
Yeah.
for content creation outside the podcast, but I don't use it for the podcast.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I bought all this stuff just to keep the show going. I did, but I didn't start out that way. I started with my phone, a couple, videos, and then I realized I wanted to interview guests. And I started doing it on my phone and just calling people, and doing, like, kind of like Zoom calls. And it was just, it was still awful. And then when I finally refined the show, that's when people started listening even more. So you
Mhm.
don't get discouraged is what I'm going to say. Don't get discouraged, because you will hit that point where you're like, no one's listening. To give it
Mhm.
time. Give it
Yeah,
time.
leverage that small audience that
Mhm.
you have starting out, because they're eventually going to be the ones that are going to go out and tell people, hey, you got to check out this guy's stuff, or you got to check out this girl's stuff. Like it's great. And then it grows and it snowballs and continues to snowball until you have, you know, a larger audience and you expand and you have different ways of reaching them and all of those different facets. But, you know, keep chipping away at the existing, you know, audience that you have, no matter how big or small it is, and, you know, and see what blessings will come, you know, over time then after that.
Definitely. Well, Ryan, it's been great having you on the show. I'm really thankful we finally got this chance to do this.
Yeah,
But thank you for coming on the show.
for sure, man.
To all those out there, just stay safe out there. Like, I'm glad you listened to the show. I thank you for all your support. Thank you for those who subscribe monthly and pay for help support the show. And definitely. So tune in next time. I have a couple of guests coming up. Actually, a really special guest coming up who I'm not going to name yet because it hasn't been confirmed, but tune in for that upcoming guest. But thank you for tuning in, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.